Good morning, Rabbi Sai. How's everybody doing? You're not supposed to answer that question. It's just a rhetorical question. I'm getting answers here. And by Shalom and Michal or Leon, is that how you pronounce? Nishmas our Zaydi, Rabbi Joel Feldman on his second yard side, Rav Chaim Yoel ben Rav Yosef, and B'schus Refuah Shleima for Shifra Yehudis Bas Yafa Leah. Should have a Refuah Shleima, and the Shama should have an Aliyah. Beautiful email, a very long one. So I didn't really see where I could take my time, nice and slow. Good morning, Rav Eli. My name is Mordechai Ashkenazi. 41 years old, from Thornhill, Ontario, Canada. It would be much better if he sent in a good picture of himself so we know who we're talking about. But okay. No. This is Mordechai Abramovitz. I'm one of your silent Talmidim who wakes up at 5 a.m. to hear your recorded shir on YouTube every day since the beginning of Brachas. This meal has been a long time coming and I've been wanting to share my story with you and MDY community for quite some time. I know you said you get 20 plus emails a day. That was when he sent this. In the beginning of Pesachim. Today it's less than that. I'm hoping you'll read this at one point in the near future. Please accept my humble thank you for all that you have done for the Olam and myself. I find it easy to connect with you and given that you're a businessman who also runs a family and loves to learn. Baruch Tia. Here's my story I'd like to share with the Olam. A couple of years ago I got married. My wife and I started coming closer to Yiddishkeit, Baruch Hashem. Today our children attend from schools and are staggering away. How much time do we have here? We have a few minutes. Okay. My growth in Yiddishkeit always took a form of online shiurim, some classes and some Gemara learning. I don't have a formal learning skills aside from the ability to read, speak Hebrew and Rashi. This all changed at the last Siyam HaShas. A week before the Siyam HaShas in January 2020, my two boys, 8 and 11, started to ask me if we're going to attend. I didn't really consider going as I wasn't making a Siyam on anything. I didn't feel a connection to what was being celebrated. I continued and ignored their request, but on the day of the Siyam, I hope I don't break down here. On the day of the Siyam, my 8-year-old son, Michal, took me aside and said the following, with much sadness in his eyes. Abba, if you don't take me to the Siyam HaShas today, the next time I'll be able to go is when I'm 15 and a half years old. You need to take me. And that is when a tremendous amount of guilt fell upon me. I told him I'll do my best to get tickets and send him to Cheder with high hopes. In short, I got tickets, and we had an absolutely fantastic time at the Siyam. We were all on such a high. However, on the way home, the kids started asking me. It always goes like that. It's not, you give them a little bit, then they ask for more. The kids started asking me if I was going to do the Daf Yomi. Just the idea of learning one page of Gemara a day made my head spin, and it seemed extremely unattainable. I told them I'd think about it, and that evening I sifted through one of the magazines that were given at the Siyam. I noticed that the arts were taking out a few pages in the magazine to advertise, but they also included the first Amud of Brachas Daf Beis, English and Hebrew. I mentioned it to my wife, who in turn told me to push forward and give it a shot. So there I was, 10 p.m. on a Sunday night, learning the daf through a magazine. I found it extremely rewarding the next day. I found it extremely rewarding, and the next day I found your share on YouTube, and the rest is history. I went from learning from a magazine to learning online using Sefaria. So what is it called? Sefaria, to borrowing a Gemara, to purchasing my own English Hebrew Shas set by Art Scroll. It is the centerpiece in our home, and we built a bookshelf to house it. I can't believe I'm slowly touching each page of Gemara and about to be Messiah my third Masechta. All right. Without my son pushing me hard to attend the Siyam and the nudge of my wife to go weiter, learning lots of Yiddish from you, I'd probably be dibble-dabbling in Torah and far from where I am today. It's because of my son and my wife that I started, and it's because of you that I continue. When I think about how your shir has affected me, the pasuk of Shir Hashirim Rabbah comes to mind. It says, Hashem tells Bnei Yisrael, Pesach kichudish shel machat ve'eftach lachem Pesach shel ulam. Open for me a hole like the eye of a needle, and I will open for you the rest like the entranceway to a great hall. I'm sure by now you know how many people you have helped open a hole the size of a needle. I thank you again for all that you do, and Baruch Hashem will meet, Be'ezer Hashem will meet in the near future. Either in Eretz Yisrael, when you come to Toronto to do business, not going to happen. Better yet, maybe you should do a North American tour where every day you give a shir in a different city. Chazaku Baruch Tiyeh, and have a wonderful day. Sincerely, Mark Abramowitz. Nice, no? It goes in your book? Yes. Givaldik.
Just about us.
Just about. You already have a name. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaroi. All right, so today is Daf Chav Zayin. We started an amazing sugya, a Shas sugya, something that we could take for the rest of Shas. It's not that often in Shas, but it's a beautiful concept that we haven't had until now. The idea of Zeh v'Zeh Goyrim. So the Gemara starts off with the case of an oven. The oven was finished. It's makeh b'patish. The last finishing touch to the oven was done be'isur with arla. And that makes the entire oven asur. One shita says there's nothing you can do with this oven. You can never use it because it's a shtik isur. Yiddish, shtik isur. So you got to break it up, throw it into the garbage. The other brisa says it's fine. The Gemara for a second thought that perhaps it's Rebbe that says it's no good. Why? Because we know that Rebbe holds to a loaf of bread that was baked in an oven with isur. So according to Rebbe, the loaf of bread is no good. Why? So the Gemara wanted to say, if the bread is no good, then the oven is no good. I baked the bread with this, or I baked it with arla, so the bread is no good. So too, the oven is baked with arla, it's no good. So the Gemara says, no, it's very good. Because bread, and here's the nukuda, bread, the isser goes into the bread. Shvach eitzim, the fuel, how did I bake the bread? With an isser, so the fuel is in the bread. An oven, you're right. The fuel is in the oven. That's how I got an oven. But I'm not stopping here. I want to use the oven tomorrow. I want to bake a bread tomorrow. So I have an oven that's asur, and tomorrow I'm going to use fuel that's mutter. What is that called? Zeh v'zeh goyrim. My second bread, my loaf of bread that I'm using with a bad oven comes from two sources. A bad oven and good wood. Together, that's Zeh v'Zeh Goyrim. So perhaps Rebbe doesn't agree to that idea. Maybe Rebbe holds Zeh v'Zeh Goyrim is mutter. When it's two sources. If I'm eating a bread, a shtik, arla bread, the whole bread was made out of arla, that's one Goyrim. Right now, I'm eating bread that was made from arla. But if I'm using an oven that was made out of arla, in order to bake another loaf of bread, I have to use fuel. And that fuel I'm going to use is going to be mutter fuel. So then the bread that comes out of that is the toitzah. I'm going to use yeshivish now. Toitzah, a little bit of asur oven, a little bit of kosher fuel, Zeh v'Zeh Goyrim, mutter, or Zeh v'Zeh Goyrim asur, depends what you hold. Who's the man Omar then that says that this oven is no good, break it up, throw it into the garbage because Zeh v'Zeh Goyrim asur? Now I understand why you use that other guy's shear. You'll never how it's going. If you miss the first 3 minutes, you need another guy's shear. Okay. Now we have a trader in the house. I'm not going to say who he is. I don't want to be Mvayishim B'Ravim. But I caught him yesterday after shear, listening to somebody else's shear. He's doing chazar. I was like, what are you doing? Okay. That explains it all. Says the Gemara. We're not going to go into the Gemara yet. So the Gemara, we finished off yesterday, says it's Rebbe Eliezer. And that's what we're going to stay with. But in typical Gemara fashion, the Gemara says, perhaps it's another Rebbe Eliezer. We know the real one. The Gemara knows the real one because the real one is literally word for word this case that we're talking about. But the Gemara says, maybe it's another Rebbe Eliezer. What's the case of Rebbe Eliezer? Here. We spoke about it yesterday, but maybe a little bit more, we'll slow down here because it's the beginning of this year. In order to make dough, you need leaven. You need this thing, sa'ar, that gives it the power to rise, whatever it gives it the dough, the sourdough part. This is sourdough. So a person has two. These are identical in terms of what they are. This one, don't pretend it's not empty. This one is made out of truma. This one is made out of chulin. And they both fall into the dough. What's the halacha? So Rebbe Eliezer says, the 6 lines from the bottom. Neither one has enough material in it to make the bread. You need both of them together. V'nistarfu v'chimtzu, and they both came together and they made the bread chametz, and they made a bread. Rebbe Eliezer omer, achar naniba. All Rebbe Eliezer, we have to remember this. All Rebbe Eliezer says is, I go by the last one. So if first chulin went in, and then truma went in, so I consider the dough truma. Only a kohen can eat it. If first then chulin went in, I consider it chulin, you're allowed to eat it. No, says Chacham, I don't care what fell in when. It has to have enough in it to make a dough, to make chametz. Vamra Abaya, and here comes Abaya. What does this have to do with our sugya? Abaya says, Lo yishanu ela shekodem v'sila kesei isur. If truma falls into the dough, and then I pour in chulin, Rebbe Eliezer says it's chulin. Says Abaya, wait a minute. I believe it's only if you remove this. You see this truma, you got to get it out of here. Gone. Now I'm left with chulin, then it's good. So according to Abaya, what if he didn't remove the truma? What if the truma is still in there? You have truma and chulin together. What is that called? Zeh v'zeh goyrim. Both of these cause this bread to be chametz, to become bread. Zeh v'zeh goyrim also. That's why he says you have to remove it. But this is Abaya's chiddush. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. That's what Rebbe Eliezer said. That's Abaya's way of seeing it. Says the Gemara. And Memela, so we have finally a Mando Amar that says, Zeh v'zeh goyrim asur. His name is Rebbe Eliezer. Who's Rebbe Eliezer? The famous Rebbe Eliezer, who was Nifter, Rachman al-Slan, one of the saddest things in Shas, Nifter, Shamuti. They put him in Cherem, he's the Galad Dar, he's everything. He fought with everybody, he didn't greet anybody, and they put him in Cherem. So Rebbe Eliezer is the one that says, Zeh v'zeh goyrim asur, and we don't even paskin like him. Who told you that that's the real pshat in the Gemara? All words is achar, achron, and iba. If truma went into the mix at the end, I view it as truma. Why? Because that's the punch. That's what caused the whole bread to happen. I put in 50% chulin. The second 50% of truma is what makes my bread. If I put in first 50% truma, then I put in 50% chulin. So I view it after. It's a svara in how I view it, but not because zev is goyim. Nothing to do with that. So Mamela, I cannot use that as my source for zev is goyim. Loishna kodem v'silas iser, loishna loy kodem v'silas iser. Avo bevasachas, but if they both went in the same exact second, maybe Rebbe Eliezer will hold hachanami the shari. And you don't say zev is goyim, so he's not the author of zev is goyim. Elo, Rebbe Eliezer, the Atzia Asherah. It is Rebbe Eliezer, but a different source. It's not al heimeno eitzim asurim bahano. You take wood, Atzia Asherah, a tree of Avodah Zarah tree. You take from it some branches. You're not allowed to use it, you're not allowed to benefit from it. Hisik b'misatanor, it's literally our case. Our case was this case, just Arla. Over here, I'm using Avodah Zarah instead of Arla. I'm creating my oven. As it leaves the factory, it needs to be heated up before I could ship it out. I heat it up with Avodah Zarah. Chodosh yutatz, there's no option, says the Brisa, the Mishnah. I must break it up into pieces. I can never use this. Why? Because the entire oven is Avodah Zarah oven. What created the oven? What gave it its last punch? Avodah Zarah. Yutatz, break it. Yashan, if it's an older oven, I just used Avodah Zarah fuel. So wait until it cools off a little bit. Amud Bais, literally word for word like we learned yesterday. If you bake bread with this Avodah Zarah stuff, asur bahano, then you can't eat the bread. Nisar ba'acheros, and if you mixed the Avodah Zarah bread, it got mixed into other breads, ba'acheros, some Rishonim are not goyres this, because it's like a svek, whatever. Kulan asurim bahano, because Avodah Zarah you can never be invatal Avodah Zarah, it's asur b'mash. Now, if we stop right here. It says that you have an oven made out of Avodah Zarah, the last fuel that put it together, hardened it, whatever it did to it. This oven you have to throw into the garbage. Why? Let me use it tomorrow to bake bread. I have an Avodah Zarah oven, and I'm going to put in nice kosher wood. It's zeh v'zeh goyrim. I made bread out of two sources, a aser and a mutter, and it should be okay. From the fact that the Mishnah says that you have to throw out the oven, yutats, break it up into pieces, smithereens, and throw it out, it's a raya that zeh v'zeh goyrim, aser. Now who says this? Tanakama. I don't know who he is. Tanakama. Comes Rebbe Eliezer. So if we don't have Rebbe Eliezer, we have the Tanakama. That's actually good enough for us. Okay, but the Gemara goes weiter. Rebbe Eliezer oimer yoylech hano liyam hamelech. An incredible chiddush. You know what's going on here? You have a whole bakery full of breads, and there's one bread in there that was baked with avodah zarah. So rather than throwing out all the breads in the garbage, like the Mishnah says, like the Tanakama says Rebbe Eliezer have a chap. Take the isser, transfer it to cash. Unbelievable. Take an isser, avodah zarah isser, put it into cash, take the cash, put it into the Dead Sea, into a place that you'll never be able to have enough from it. What exactly are you putting into the Dead Sea? What are you putting into the cash? The bread? Rashi says, very interesting, not the bread. The value of the wood that you use from avodah zarah. Okay. The others that are mechulik, other Rishonim are mechulik. I'll go upon him. Okay, and let's see what they say. Amrullah ein pidyon avodah zarah. Stop. They say you cannot do it. That's mamish a trick. It doesn't work. Avodah zarah remains in the bread. Great. But what do you see? That if you don't do this trick, you don't transfer avodah zarah from the bread into the money, then it would be aser. The bread would be aser. But Rebbe Eliezer agrees to everything the Tanakama said. That's how we have to say. Rebbe Eliezer agrees to everything the Tanakama said. They have to throw out the oven. The oven is no good. Why? Because zeh v'zeh goyrim. So Rashi just brings out. So why are we saying it's Rebbe Eliezer? It says the Tanakama. Rebbe Eliezer, it's like a diuk. Rebbe Eliezer maybe agrees to the Tanakama. Okay, so say, what's the source of a Tana that says zeh v'zeh goyrim aser? The Tanakama of this Mishnah. The answer is because he doesn't have a name. So we can't say somebody said a shida. Who? Mr. Anonymous. We don't like anonymous. We want a name. So it's more than Rebbe Eliezer. It's Rebbe Eliezer, the Tanakama. There's a whole bunch of people that hold zeh v'zeh goyrim. You hear the raya? It's only that Rebbe Eliezer comes up with a trick, but minus the trick, he agrees to everything else in the Mishnah, that if you have an oven that was made from avodah zarah, you have to throw it out because you can't bake in it any longer, because even though when you bake with it, the fuel will be kosher, the oven is no good. So you have a zeh goyim, aser. No, sorry. Who told you? Maybe that's a special halacha in avodah zarah. The chamer is the worst of the worst. The shleish chamuros. You have to get killed, we just said the other day, for avodah zarah. Who told you that this applies to Arla? Says the Gemara, Elam Kain Aman Tirmiya. Very interesting. So then who is the source? We don't have anything else, we're stuck. V'oid, Tanya Behedya, not only that, it says Mefurish, you're asking me, maybe it's only in avodah zarah. It says Mefurish, it's not in avodah zarah, it's in Arla, it's in everything else that you heat up the oven in. Okay. So that's the source. Omar Abaya. Im timtza loymar zeh v'zeh goyrim aser. So says Abaya like this. What does Rebbe hold? Rebbe, we wanted to say Rebbe holds zeh v'zeh goyrim aser, and we said no. It's very possible he just says a loaf of bread is aser because shvach eitzim goes into bread. We don't know what Rebbe holds in zeh v'zeh goyrim. So Abaya says, listen, if Rebbe in fact holds zeh v'zeh goyrim is aser, like, okay, so then in other words he agrees to Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe, I know Rebbe Eliezer. Vim timtza loymar zeh v'zeh goyrim, right? Because you can ask the question. He says, who's this Tana that says zeh v'zeh goyrim? We're forced into a corner to say it's Rebbe Eliezer. Maybe it's Rebbe. No, Rebbe never mentioned the words zeh v'zeh goyrim. It's Rebbe Eliezer that mentioned zeh v'zeh goyrim aser in avodah zarah. So maybe our Tana is Rebbe Eliezer. But let's say Rebbe also holds zeh v'zeh goyrim. Great, he'll hold like Rebbe Eliezer. V'im timtza loymar zeh v'zeh goyrim mutar. And if you'll say that Rebbe holds, like the Gemara pushed off before, that Rebbe holds zeh v'zeh goyrim is mutar, it's only Rebbe Eliezer that holds it's aser. So why does Rebbe say the bread is asur? Why is bread asur if you bake it in the oven? So, like we explained the entire time, because bread is very different, you don't have to come into a zeh v'zeh garim. The actual bread is one piece of Isser, who was created through Isser, through asur fuel. So when you bite into the bread, what are you biting? You're biting the Isser. You can't say, oh, zeh v'zeh garim. It's asur, it's Isser in there. And therefore, the Gemara comes up with the halacha l'maisa. Hani ka'aros v'chaisais utzluchiyos. If you make some earthenware, you make a bowl, you make a cup that was created with avodah zarah. So what is that called? Is that like a piece of bread, or is that like an oven? What is it? So the Gemara says it's like a piece of bread. Why? Because once you have a cup, this cup was created with bad fuel, avodah zarah fuel. So this is an avodah zarah cup. So now it's like eating bread. There. I mean, I just used avodah zarah. I just instead of biting it, I'm drinking from it. So this is avodah zarah. Where is it different? In a pot. A pot is different because a pot, you don't drink from a pot. What do you do with a pot? You cook with it. So when I'm cooking with it, two things are going on. I'm using a pot that's avodah zarah. Let's call it a shtik avodah zarah. It was created through fuel of avodah zarah, but it doesn't do anything for me until I light a fire and I make chont with it. But making chont, turning on the flame, that's another source. So there's two sources here. There's the actual pot, and then there's the flame underneath the pot. How do I make chont? I need two things to make chont. I put the chont in here, and then I light a flame underneath. So I have kosher fuel underneath, treif chazer pot on top, avodah zarah pot on top. What is that called? Zeh v'zeh goyrem mutter. If I hold zeh v'zeh goyrem mutter. But if I'm using the self, that's a no-no. Right? So what's the obvious question? When you put the chont in the pot, you're using the pot right then and there. Forget about turning on the flame. That's the Gemara saying. Second lashon. Just to hold the chont is the usage. Yeah, correct. That's what we do. You peel the potatoes and you put them in the pot so they don't fall on the floor. So you need the pot to store it. Then you take the beans, you go like this, you put it in the pot. Before you even turn on the flame, you're putting things in the pot. It's storage for that second, says the Gemara. Kipligi betana v'gdeira, in an oven and a pot. You say that two usages, a heter and a mutter, a heter and asur are asur. So over here, this pot, this oven would be asur. The man is a goyre mutter, but according to Rebbe, that two usages, two sources are mutter. Shari, you have the flame and you have the pot. It's mutter. Ikidamri no. Even in this case, even according to Rebbe, where two sources is mutter, kedera asura, but a pot is different. Why? You fill up the pot with food before you even turn on the fire. That's one source. And what's the source? The asur pot. What about an oven? An oven doesn't work like that. An oven, before you put food in there, nobody puts in a challah into a cold oven and then turn on the oven. First you preheat it, right, chef? Okay, he says yeah. Or so you put in the fuel, the kosher fuel, and the treif oven, and together you have two sources. Then you put your food in, but not when you make chom. Not when you put things on a. It's possible a lot of times you don't turn on a fire and then start pouring the beans in. You put in all your ingredients, then you turn it on. Okay. Then it'll be then in Nechanami. Omer Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shmuel. Okay. Omer Rabbi Yosef, Omer Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Shmuel. Rabbi Yosef says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Shmuel, Tanu sheisiko b'klibet. This we learned already. Don't get scared. It's word for word what we learned. Just the manda omerim are reversed. That what? Tanu sheisiko b'klibet arla. If the final makeh patish of this oven, you heated it up with the peels of arla, or because bekitzer, you heat it up with something that's asur, chodesh yutatz, there's no way out of this. You have to break the oven. Yoshan Yutzan. If it's an older oven, let it cool off. Ava Beis Hapas. And if you bake bread in it, Rebbe Omer Hapas Muteres. Oops. The whole time we're saying Rebbe Hapas Asur. What's the matter? Okay. Bechachamim Oimrim Hapas Asura. So basically we have a reverse of what we said before. Just in the Shitas. Instead of Rebbe saying the Pas Asur, he says Pas Muter. Says the Gemara, Vatanya Ibcha, learned yesterday, that the bread is Asur. Says the Gemara, Shmuel Ibchatani, what shot is? That's how Shmuel heard it. You're right. Shmuel heard it in the reverse. This is very interesting though. Let me just say about Peh real quickly. The halacha, in fact, is like we said until now. Rebbe holds Pas is Asur. What's going on? But Shmuel was concerned, and this is mamish interesting halacha. Shmuel was concerned that people are not going to believe him when Shmuel says that the halacha is like Rebbe, and he beats his friends. We have to trust, the halacha is like Rebbe, even though he's going against many people. That's the halacha. The halacha is like Rebbe. So what did he do to trick everybody? He flipped the shita. You believe it? He said the Chachamim are the ones that said it's Asur. So now everybody's going to say, Shmuel knows what he's talking about. The halacha is like the Rabbim, like Chachamim. Great. Otherwise, people would laugh at Shmuel. He was scared that they wouldn't listen to him. Shmuel, Gal Adar? Even in those days, that's how it was. Shmuel, he made a mistake. The halacha is not like Rebbe because look, it's Chachamim against Rebbe. It can't be. So what did he do? You're allowed to do this, it says here. You're allowed to fool everybody by flipping the shita. Everywhere you're right. The halacha, and this the Talmid Chachamim knew that when Rebbe argues on all his friends, we don't pass him like Rebbe. Only when it's one against one. One against one, on a one-on-one, Rebbe always wins. One against the whole team, he doesn't win. But in this particular case of bread, the halacha is you can never eat this bread because it comes from the fuel source is avodah zarah, and it's shvach eitzim. The eitzim are in the bread itself, and that's avodah zarah, or whatever it is. Besavar esniya ipcha. Let me just say it the reverse. Ki heichad deneikum rabbanon liisura, so that everybody will say that it's asur. It's just an amazing thing. 2 lines from the bottom. They're not going to believe me. So maybe I'm going to lie to everybody. Says the Gemara, Bishlag abi cholim divrei kol hapas muteres. This is where you slow down the double speed. Bishlag abi cholim divrei kol hapas muteres. If you cooked on top of coals, everybody agrees that it is mutter. It's coals. Says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, V'Reb Chia Barashi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. It's either Shmuel or Rabbi Yochanan. Chad Omar Lo Yishanu Ela Gecholim Oimemais. So Oimemais basically means, this is not a good picture. Don't look at this picture. Oimemais means that they're done. The coals are black. You look at them, they're black. They still have heat, but they're black. I'm assuming it's black. They're gone. Rashi says kabui. Extinguished. So everybody agrees that when I cooked off of these coals, I'm not benefiting from avodah zarah. Where's avodah zarah? Poof, it's gone. It's nothing. It's ashes. It's gone. But when there's a flickering coal, loy chashois means they're whispering. Says Rashi. They're talking to each other. It looks like they're talking. There's a conversation. The red goes here and comes there, bounces around. Asurin, because now you're using avodah zarah. Says no. Even if they're bouncing around, it's mutter. And the Gemara is going to explain the logic here. What's going on? I understand if you tell me, look, there's a real flame, it's asur. The avodah zarah, the arla, is going into my bread. It's cooking my bread. But if you tell me that it's mutter, what's the case that it's asur inside the bread? How does the flame go inside the bread? You're telling me, here's a nice flame, flickering coals. No, it's mutter. So then when is it asur? When does the bread become asur? The Rebbe said in the Brisa that it's asur. It's talking about when something like this. when you could see, defined here. So there's really a shaila. What exactly cooks? What creates the flame? What creates the fire? Over here you have real, let's call this Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah wood. So is it the actual wood that's on fire that create, or it's a millisecond later, it's not Avodah Zarah anymore. It's spent fuel. So he says, Kishavuka kenegdoi, when you actually see the flame, you see the wood is in existence. It's mamish there. This is Avodah Zarah. That, I agree, will make the bread aser. But if you have, let's say, coals, it's already done, burnt to crisp. This is not Avodah Zarah. This has been Avodah Zarah. So that doesn't create an iser. It's gone. The Avodah Zarah is gone. Over here, the Avodah Zarah is in existence, so it creates iser on my food, on my bread. Okay. Says the Gemara, and if you argue on that, and you say, even this is not Avodah Zarah. It doesn't make it Isser on my bread. So in what case does Avodah Zarah wood make something Asr? Where's the case of Asr? Even when it's in existence, it's on fire, and it creates a whole bread, it's mutter. So then what is Asr? Michlal Rabbanan de Pliga, Alei, Sharu, Afiluk Shavuki Kenegdoi, Elaitim di Sur Rabbanan Mishkachaslu. So what's the case? On a chair. You put it in a building. If you mamish use Avodah Zarah to sit on, then it's a problem. We'll just stop for 1 millisecond. I want to say Shalom Aleichem to Reb Zalman Weiss. I see he's watching. Dr. Shamroth, Shalom Aleichem. Avi Kamiansky, I hope he's back in town. He's gone for a little bit. Israel Sounders, Shalom Aleichem. Mendy Auerbach. I don't want to be Mevayishim, so we'll go weiter. I'll see you in Kaila later. Okay. Says the Gemara. Boy minei Romi bar Chama mirav Chizda. Tanur.
We missed you at the party last night.
You were at a party last night? I wasn't invited? It was an afterthought kind of thing. You really went? Okay, we'll talk about it later during Chazar Shatz. Chas v'shalom. By the way, that guy that said that how could I shmooze on Zoom after Shir, you have to daven, but the minyan is in my parking lot. It's literally downstairs and it starts 15 minutes after Shir is over, so whatever. I don't know, I have to ask a gadol. Another reason why. So the same idea, instead of using Arla, Avodah Zarah, I'm using the wood from the Beis HaMikdash. Vava boys pass, and I made bread with it. The Rabbanan the shor become Aisamai. According to Rabbanan that say that if I bake bread out of Arla, it's mutter. What about if I bake bread out of Kachim, Beis HaMikdash stuff, Amalei, Hapas Asura? It's Asur. So even according to Chachamim, what's going on here? One oven is fueled by Arla, mutter. One oven is fueled by Mizbeach wood. It's Asur. Why? Umay ben Zula Arla. That's not such a great question. Arla b'teila b'masayim. We learned the other day that Arla is not so strong. It's very weak. Why? Because if it's 1 in 200, it disappears. Hegdish, afilu be'elef lo batal. Hegdish is never batal. And since it's a stronger kind of iser, for whatever reason, that says that you cannot bake bread with it. If you bake bread with it, you will be over. It's aser. So in other words, maybe the pshat is, I'm just thinking now aloud, if you burn the wood, so it's a very weak isser. It's gone. It's spent fuel, but in Hegdish, there's no such thing as spent fuel. It never goes. It never leaves. So Mela, that's why it's asr. Amalei Rava. Elo Amar Rava. Rava says, I didn't like your question, but if you want to hear a good question, here it goes. Ikashile hokashi. It's a very good chach, he asks. Valoi mo'ala masik. How in the world is it possible to bake bread with Hegdish wood? Tell me the case. You take Hegdish wood, you put it in an oven, you light it. The second I light the wood, it's not Hegdish wood anymore. It just became chulin. Why? Because that second I was over Isser, I'm Ela. I definitely wanted it. Okay. But what? What?
The second that you had it,
Oh, you want to go back to that Taisus? Don't ask. I can't. I went back to Koil and I told them what happened here. That the Olam didn't agree to Taisvis. They had a hard, didn't agree. They had a hard time. And we looked it up in the art. It says like Ruvain is a galgal. That's how they learn pshat. Help much, but it's still a galgal. This is 22. That's how the art school learns. We say our own pshat. It had to be a catch 22. We weren't so masking it. The kids at the Olam had a very hard time with it. Very, very hard time. Another very interesting thing, I don't know if I should say that. Okay, whatever. I said in the Koil yesterday, I said, there's certain shiurim that talk a lot of lumdus in Daf Yomi. And I said, I bet you that they didn't mention this Taisvus. And they said, it's impossible. So I went last night, 12 o'clock at night, I went on the shir. I went through a certain shir. Does not mention this Taisvus at all, but Kolmene chidushim from this one and the Tzanz, unbelievable. What I'm trying to say is, we find so much beauty and geschmack on the daf. There's no reason to run to a Amud Beis, and we have it right here. It's true. He might have been. He didn't want to confuse the oil. All right. We're very good friends. I love him a lot. But it's just interesting. Just geschmack raid right here on the daf. How do you have bread that's made with hegdish? It's not hegdish anymore. As soon as you turn on the flame, you will have Isser Doiraisa, and it's not hegdish anymore. You're right. Great question. So maybe I have to answer mamsha doicha kind of thing. We're talking about a specific type of wood called the wood of shlamim. Now shlamim is a carbon. So what does the word carbon mean? I set aside wood. I'm going to sell it later on, and with that money, I'm going to buy shlamim. So we have a concept. Here's the pasuk. This is the key word. When you're mile, the only way to do it is by accident, and if you do it on purpose, it's not considered me'ilah. So me'ilah, says the Gemara, just like when I do me'ilah, it has to be b'shoigig, not b'mezid. B'mezid, my time eloi, why is it kivin the lav bar me'ilahu loy nafek l'chulin? And if I do it b'mezid, I didn't do anything. I wasn't mile. And it doesn't leave, it doesn't go out into chulin and remains hegdish. Shlamim nami kivin the lav bar me'ilah ninu loy nafek l'chulin. Shlamim, I can't be moil in shlamim. What's shlamim? Shlamim is for me. Shlamim is kachi kalam. You bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, you shecht it, and I eat it. So there's no me'ilah in it. So then I can't remove the me'ilah. I can't do a trick and be moil in it and then make it, it's chulin. But nevertheless, it's still asur b'hana. So in me'ilah, we're talking about wood that was designated for shlamim, and that's the case that it's asur b'hana. V'choleicha, asked the Gemara, is that true? Yes? I'm listening.
Why doesn't the Gemara just leave it as hekdesh and according to Rabbi Yehuda b'mezid?
Is they talk about it. Yishkoyach, they talk about it. They do ask the kasha. Ayin Rashi. So, says Gemara. There's certain things I don't want to confuse the oilam too much. Taisus is one thing. Rashi is another thing. So listen, you're telling me that every time you're over me'ilah, it flies away from hegdish and becomes chulin. It says mefurash kol hanisrafin, everything that you burn, their ashes are mutter chutz ma'atzi asherah ve'efer hegdish. The ashes of hegdish la'olam asur. So why does it say la'olam by asherah? Because a guy could burn it. Okay, fine. But the point is la'olam asur. So even though it's mashma, even if I'm moil, I use it without permission, it remains hegdish. Another interesting pshat. Yes, you're right. There's a case though when this particular case is talking about when it ignited by itself. There's an outside source. Lightning came and burnt the hegdish wood. Those ashes never leave. But typically, when a king takes hegdish wood and burns it, then it flies out of hegdish. Rav Shmai Omar, Ba'isam Shetun and Gnizo, we're talking about the Trumas Hadeshin. You have to bury the Sanya, V'samai. We had this word yesterday. We learned from V'samai Benachas, V'samai Kuloi, V'samai Shaloi Yifazer. It's not a drasha. The Gemara is just telling us taich, the pshat in the word. V'sama, you should place it. Like me telling you, fly to New York. So I don't have to tell you, you have to go to the airport, you have to this. V'samai. V'samai just means put it down nicely, put it all down, don't spread it around. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ain't beer. Right? We had in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda says the only way you can burn your chametz is by burning it. Noisar. What's noisar? You have a carbon. You're only allowed to eat it, let's say, 2 days and a night, and you left it over. Shlamazel, you left it over. That's noisar. It's mamish osir. But you don't have to. You're not over every second, but you do have to burn it. Chametz yeshni b'al yiro b'al yamatzah like hochkin sheton. So certainly chametz that every minute that you keep it around, you're over avera. Of course, you have to burn it. Kavachaymer. Now, Aaron Weinstein, I don't know if you remember him. He sent us an email a long time ago that he overheard my brother talking to me, and he went over and he says, "You 8-minute daf," and then he said he had a nace, 8-minute daf. Somebody hit him, a whole zach. It turns out that he's a tremendous tzaddik, and he found out that my sister-in-law was sick, going through her whole tkufa, and every week he would bring them food, and he's a tremendous tzaddik. Why am I saying this? Because not only is it tzaddik there, once in a while he sends me geshmaka stuff. He sent me the Pirush Chai on Shabbos, on Erev, and all these things. So he sent me yesterday, in advance of the daf. That's the best, in advance. He says that the Rashash holds, in Masechet Shabbos he says, if you're going to learn from chametz, from noisar, so just like noisar you have to burn it with wood, then there should be a chiyuv to burn chametz with wood, and not on your grill. We're learning from noisar, and that's the maskanas sugya. We're learning from noisar, so it shouldn't be exactly like noisar, according to the Rambam. He says, and he says that's why the Minchas Yitzchok says that's why if you ever wondered why in those bags they sell you a feather and a wooden spoon. That's why there's a wooden spoon. To be yotzed, this thing of burning with wood, you throw it into the fire, wooden streifa. Azay zokter. Okay, so now we know why there's a wooden spoon. He didn't send me, no. But and he sent the Shalchman, it's beautiful Shalchman, it's a big tzaddik. He's a real tzidkis. He writes to me that he convinced his brother to watch the shir. Now what's the tzidkis? Because he himself is a Maggid shir. And he said, I'm done. The brother's gone, he lost his brother, but that's a true tzaddik. Okay, I wouldn't do that. Never let my brother go to somebody else's shir. And you, Levi, you watch somebody else's shir, dead meat. Zok the Gemara Chazer Rabbi Yehuda v'dani din acher. Okay, so he's right. Okay, fine. Let's do it a different way. Says Rabbi Yehuda. Noisar also b'achila. You hear this? No. I'm sorry. I skipped here. You're making a gavachomer that forces people to use fire only. It's not considered a kavachomer. Why? What's going to come out from your kavachomer? A terrible thing. That people are going to say you could only use wood, you could only use fire. And memela, they're not going to burn the chametz. Ask Rashi a Moridik question. Rashi Lishitasai, who holds that the only time Rabbi Yehuda holds that you have to use fire is right before B'dikas chametz. But B'shas HaBiur, he holds you can use anything, right? Remember that sugya? Even Rabbi Yehuda agrees you can use anything. So what's the problem? Nobody's going to leave their chametz around. Says Rashi, therefore I'm talking about 30 days before Pesach. Real quickly, I just want to say, when I was learning this Gemara, it occurred to me, there's a pasuk in Mishlei. Perek Yutes, it says, Iveles Adam Tesalef Darkoi, Val Hashem Yizaf Liboy. Loosely translated, a person does wrong, and then he blames HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Blames Hashem. Says the Vilna Gaon, it's referring to a person that accepts upon himself way too much. He gets a chizuk, and he grabs and grabs. And we know that when it comes to Ruchnius, you have an inspiration, take it with baby steps. Take one thing at a time, take a small thing, and make sure it's part of you, it becomes a habit, 30 days, 60 days, you do it, and then you go weiter. You do the daf, then you add chazara, but you don't let me learn the daf 14 times, I never learned in my life, 16 hours, let me leave my job, Slow baby steps. I thought maybe it says it here in the Gemara, that what? Kol din shata don tchilasi la'achmer. If you're too machmer on yourself, v'soifei lahakol, but at the end it's going to fall apart. Einay din. Okay. Zog the Gemara. Do we have another minute? One more minute. Chazer Rabbi Yehuda, you could leave. Chazer Rabbi Yehuda v'dani din acher. Another way to do it. It's not a kavachomer because a kavachomer will leave it to a bad taste. Here's Gzeir Shava. Rashi says. Other achronim say Rashi didn't mean Gzeir Shava. He mean more of a mamatzinu. Noiser asur b'achila, v'chametz asur b'achila. The same thing. We're going to learn from Noiser. Just like Noiser is asur b'achila, chametz is also. Ma Noiser b'sreifa, av chametz b'sreifa. So, mamatzinu, we find by Noiser you use fire, so too chametz. Amar lo, nevela techiach, shasur b'achila ben etun esreifa. But what's the connection? There's something else called a nevela. Same thing like Noiser, asur b'achila, and you don't have to burn it. So maybe you should learn chametz from nevela. Amar lev hefresh. It's very different. Noiser asur b'achila ubahana. Noiser is also both. V'chametz asur b'achila b'hana. It's much makes a lot more sense to learn chametz from Noiser. Says Gemara, my Noiser ton sreifa, chametz ton sreifa. Amar lo yishar niskol yichiach. But there's something else that's similar to both of them. Sh'asur b'achila b'hana, ve'en ton sreifa. Still, maybe I should compare it to shar niskol. Amar lev hefresh. It's very different. You can't compare it to shar niskol. Noiser asur b'achila b'hana v'anish kares. The bottom line is the Gemara knows all this. But the Gemara wants to get slowly. There's a karas, this is sarana, this is achila. Ma nois b'sreifa, v'chametz b'sreifa. And nois is the same thing. Omer loi, last line here. Chel b'shel shara niskol yichiyah sh'asur b'achila b'ana v'anish kares ve'in ton sreifa. Let's learn from the fat of a shara niskol. Has everything, checks everything out. It's asur b'achila, b'hana, you get kares, and you don't get sreifa. Atkan. Rabbi said, what time on Motzi Shabbos? No, I mean, there's no Adlakas Neiros. We did 7:30 last week. So we just continue 7:30? 7:30 he says. He's not going to be there, but he says 7:30. I go with Noam 7:30. Have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos, a wonderful day. Shir HaMalois. Shir HaMalois. Mimamakim Sicha Adinoi. Ima v'nitz shmo yad inem yamoid. Imcha slicha leman tivorei. Kivisi ad inem gifsan nefshi l'dvorei chalti. Nefshi ad inem shomrim l'boiker shomrim l'boiker. V'chel yisrael ad inem gimel noyach chesed. Stop. I love